Welcome to Cult Film School. Class is in session. We're your hosts, Adrian, that's me, and Dion.
That's me.
I don't know. I'm gonna get through this one. Okay.
Wait a minute, but like, why? What is it about these two films that are just like?
They just suck the life out of me. I don't know.
I don't know when you're listening to this, dear listener, but like, this is the blackest of Christmases.
It's a very dark day. Okay. In this episode, we are talking about the two attempts at remaking Bob Clark's 1974 seminal holiday horror classic, Black Christmas, a movie that Dion and I love so much, we covered it in our very first episode of Cult Film School.
I like it.
So why are we covering these two remakes? It's simple. Dion is punishing me for making him watch Nuki.
That's likely.
He's punishing me for something.
There you go. I'll take that.
It's that time of year where people are going through their holiday movie watch list, or if you have the Hallmark Channel, your Christmas movie watching happened at the stroke of midnight on Halloween. Nothing? You got nothing?
Yeah, that's not likely. Or yeah, that's likely. I forgot what the context was.
Thank you, Dion. Hallmark or otherwise, it's incredibly likely. I can't speak. Okay. Hallmark or otherwise, it's incredibly likely neither of the two movies we'll be discussing today are on your watch lists.
That's very likely.
From 2006, Black Christmas, and regrettably from 2019, just before COVID-19 shutdowns, Black Christmas. We should have known. But before the festivities begin, don't be naughty, be nice, and follow us on social media, all linked in the show notes of every episode. Give us a like, comment, share, check out our reviews on the movies we cover on the pod. We are on all the billionaire-owned social media, as well as Letterboxd, and can be reached at cultfilmschoolpodcast@gmail.com. This year's Christmas episode is going to be a dark one. I'm telling you, very dark.
I like Christmas lights in the dark.
Yeah, well, good. Okay, so Dion,
Yeah.
the Black Christmas remakes.
Yes.
Why?
Oh, whoa, sorry. Why are we talking about these? It apparently is a fact that Adrian and I, we both enjoy Black Christmas, Bob Clark's film from 1974. Like, I know, Adrian, and our listeners know, that you and I saw Black Christmas 2019 theatrically in first run. We went to it.
Oh, we did.
And yeah, that was an experience and a half.
Did you see 2006 first run?
No, I didn't see it in first run, no. Did you?
Yeah, Christmas Day with the whole family. No, I did not see this in first run. I don't know when I saw this. It's all a blur now. I watched it at some point in my life.
Well, that's obvious.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's interesting for this film that is, kind of beloved cult classic to have kind of spawned these quote unquote remakes. Maybe they're now reimaginings as like an experiment in contrasts. Like, how much more different from a film can one get? We have two examples. Like I said, I do like my Christmas horror films. So I wasn't not going to see these films. But I thought it would be fun to return to these two things.
Yeah, I like my Christmas horror too. Why are we talking about these?
It's it's okay. It'll be okay, Adrian. We'll have some cookies and milk. We'll wait for Santa Claus or someone to murder us in a crawl space.
Yeah, so with that, Black Christmas 2006 and Black Christmas 2019. This is the blackest of Christmases.
This holiday season at Cult Film School, we still have one rule, and that is to do your homework before coming to class. Please watch these films in advance, otherwise, beware of spoilers and Santa Claus.
Okay, Black Christmas 2006. If you go on IMDb, It'll say, on Christmas Eve, an escaped maniac returns to his childhood home, which is now a sorority house, and begins to murder the sorority sisters one by one.
If that was the synopsis that I went in, I would be a little surprised because that sounds slightly different from the film that we get. But broad strokes, yeah, sure, that's fine.
Yeah. Should we remind people what Black Christmas 74 is about?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Aside from just saying go listen to our other episode, yeah, a little brief recap.
Okay. Well, if you go on IMDb, which I am doing now,
Because we didn't do this the last time. We took like a half an hour to talk about the plot.
during their Christmas break, a group of sorority girls are stalked by a stranger.
That's very accurate for the 1974 film.
Yeah.
Again, spoilers. I really hope you're not listening to this without having seen Bob Clark's film. But yeah, the 74 film does involve the stalker presumably murdering the sorority women. But yeah, I don't know. Like the 2006 summary feels well like the 2006 film, like very kind of blatant and kind of in your face. Not a lot of what you'd call suspense, but you wouldn't know that from the summary. It just doesn't give you things like the plot twists or twist, maybe.
Well, I think it's a good thing it doesn't spoil that.
I agree. I agree. The summary as is, I think, is a good entry point to the film. It kind of covers maybe the first act, give or take. So that's fine.
Okay. So this is a Dion approved summary.
Oh man, I love it.
Great. Okay. So I guess let's start off with how this one is similar to the original Black Christmas. So we have a sorority house,
Yes.
right? We have sorority sisters. It's Christmas break.
Yes.
We have Mrs. Mack, the house mother,
Yep.
now played by Andrea Martin, who was in the original Black Christmas as one of the sorority sisters.
Callback.
We have a family member looking for a missing girl named Claire. It was her father in the original, it's her sister in this one. We have a killer in the attic who may or may not be called Billy, but in this case is totally called Billy.
There are phone calls, are there not?
Yeah, there are. There are. It's not made a big as deal as the original, but yeah, there's some phone calls.
No, but there are those like obscene phone calls, although they're not quite obscene in this film as they are in 74.
Yeah. And I didn't quite get the sense that there's a history of this been going on for a while. Whereas in the original, when we get the first phone call, like this is not the first phone call. Anyways, yeah, the killer's calling them, I guess.
There's also another similarity with one of the sorority sisters is having like kind of a falling out with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend is acting kind of like shady, if not just like he's a bad dude.
Yeah, he's like one of those like red herring characters. He might be the killer.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's it.
we do have. Speaking of the phone calls and speaking of our murderer may or may not be Billy, or in this case is Billy, we also have a Billy and an Agnes.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna get to that.
But like they are named in 74.
Yeah. So in the 74 film, the killer is making these calls and the killer has multiple voices and he refers to Billy and Agnes. You don't have to read the film that the killer is in fact Billy, although many people do. But in this version, there's a killer named Billy and he's got a sister named Agnes who's also a killer.
Hmm.
This is a good transition to how this movie's different from the original is not only does he have a sister named Agnes, but she's also his daughter.
Hello.
Of course, we're homaging the great film Chinatown. No, I just think it was just meant to make this movie as sleazy as possible.
There is a lot of that.
Yeah. If you saw Bob Clark's Black Christmas and thought if only it was more exploitive, Black Christmas 2006.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Everything with the Billy Agnes backstory is entirely there to be, like it's like Jerry Springer Christmas edition kind of scummy family dynamics.
This is as scummy as I've ever seen a family unit. Like, this makes, like, the Rob Zombie Halloween Michael Myers family unit look like, Leave It to Beaver. Like, this Bill so he's born with a liver disease, which makes his skin cartoonishly yellow, like he's that character from Sin City, and he witnesses as a child his mom and her boyfriend murder his father and bury him under the porch,
Yep.
and then because he witnesses this, the boyfriend and the mom do, like, a whole flowers in the attic thing where, like, they keep Billy locked in the attic, and then his mom rapes him? Is that fair to say?
Yes, that is fair to say.
Okay. And 9 months later gives birth to his sister daughter, Agnes, and then one Christmas, for some reason, he decides to come out of the attic. She looks like she's like 10, 12, right?
Yeah, yeah, about there, yes.
For some reason, he stays in the attic all those Christmases between, comes out, kills the boyfriend, pulls out the eye of his sister daughter, Agnes,
Yes,
strangles his mom with Christmas lights.
as you would.
It's a Christmas movie. Then takes the cookie cutter stencils and makes cookies out of his mom's skin and eats them for reasons. I have no idea why. He is also a cannibal for some reason in this movie.
Yeah, yeah. For some reason.
This movie was produced by the Weinsteins. We should just get that out of the way. Like,
And I just okay, so we've opened this can of worms, right? I don't want to say everything that's wrong with this film is because of Harvey and Bob Weinstein, but it's very clear a lot of the choices that were made were at the insistence of the producers. This is very clear if you hear director Glenn Morgan talk about the production.
you mean blame the movie on the producers?
In part, if you even watched that thing I showed you, right? Like a special featurette that came out with, I think, a German copy of this movie on Blu-ray.
Can I just say that that was the most depressing making of I've ever seen in my life?
Yeah. Well, but like what is interesting there, right? That is not after the film is made. That's while he's making this film.
He's so depressed making this movie.
While he's making this film, he's basically saying, "Yeah, like all these jump scares. I hate these jump scares, but I got to put them in." This 2006 film, it's like, yeah. So what if we did Black Christmas, but we just add like more killers, more depravity, awful, like all of these things. I mean, maybe we'll talk about the in a different light in a minute, but I don't think any of these choices is a good choice for like I guess this film. I want to say like any film, but like maybe some films we have cannibalism. Hey, that's fine. But this is like my chocolates in your peanut butter, except it's like my Christmas films in your cannibalism. It just feels like a lot of these choices exploitation are made to kind of be extreme. I don't know.
Yeah, it's clear Glenn Morgan, the director, was making one movie with the Weinsteins who were forcing him to make another movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, all this exploitive stuff we're talking about, from what I've read, it has been all because of the Weinsteins. Making Billy and Agnes cannibals is because of the Weinsteins. It just comes out of nowhere for me because, like, when it's happening, I'm just like, well, why is he eating that? Like, like it doesn't make sense.
The eyeballs. Yeah.
Why is he yellow? Like, I don't know.
Who released Sin City? Was that also Dimension? I don't know. I just know that like that yellow bastard was like I don't know. I have no other like possible explanation for why he's yellow.
Like, cartoonishly yellow.
Yes.
Yeah, like he glows. Like,
You think they'd even just make him red or green, right? Like
yeah.
but again, right? Like he is jaundiced, he is ill. This yellow the color is associated with like sickness and illness. This is the externalizing his pathology or his like perversity. He is a visible monster. We don't have visible monsters in 1974. Part of the allure of that film is this idea that we don't know who the monster is. We don't know who the killer is. And even when we get glimpses of the killer, it is so hidden and so like secretive. So like this is just like the complete opposite instinct. It's like you remember that thing that we had that was hidden before and that was like a subtextual backstory that may or may not mean anything. Yeah, well here's the whole film. It's like thanks, maybe no.
Well, that's the whole thing about the original is we go through the whole movie and we never find out just who is in that attic,
Yeah.
right? So it's terrifying. But in this one, not only do we know who's in that attic, we know his whole backstory and we keep intercutting it to his backstory. The editing's very jarring in this movie. It doesn't flow. Uh, but Glenn Morgan, like, even got the blessing of Bob Clark. Bob Clark executive produced this thing. So, like, it's very clear he was trying to do something more in that less is more vein.
Yes. After seeing this film, right, like, I don't think much of it. It does a few things, I think. I guess I don't know if I even say well, but it makes a few decisions and sticks them. Like, it's like, okay, that's a decision. But, like, I can't hate Glenn Morgan as a director because I ended up going back and watching Final Destination, which he co-wrote. And, like, I can't hate any guy that names his character Valerie Luton. It's like, yeah, it's and he even name drops Luton when he's on the set of this Black Christmas film, talking about like this approach to horror, this approach to suspense. That approach, mind you, is totally absent from the 2006 film as it was released.
I liked Final Destination.
So did I. I literally watched it last week, and I was like, you know what? This is kind of smart. It's effective. I mean, it's not like the best thing in the world, but like, yeah, it's good. And also, his writing partner also produced this film with him. It's James Wong, is that right?
He directed Final Destination and then he produced this one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, I only mention this because it's very clear, right, that like Morgan is like a cinephile, right, like a fan of this kind of genre of the horror thriller. It's like, yeah, 100%. And it also feels clear that there were certain decisions that were made, but it feels like in the approach, like to call it ham-fisted is like an insult to ham. It is just so, you said exploitative. It is so in your face. It is so grotesque. To a degree, that's what it's aiming for. So to that end, I think it's successful, but it just feels so out of place in this film world that even this film builds.
It's so strange because when you're watching it, it feels like there's two different movies going on. But it really shouldn't feel like that because the sorority house that the girls are in is also back in the day where Billy the Killer and his family lived. Like, this was their house. And we're intercutting to like the past of the, like, we're in the same house in both timelines, but it feels like we're in like completely different movies. But I don't know why it feels like that because it should feel very like connected. It's very disconnected.
It is. It is. Especially when those worlds literally intersect.
Yeah, exactly.
So when they're in the attic and they're busting through like the between the walls to get away from the murderers and to be saved, and yeah, like it feels, yeah, like a mess. That's a good way to describe it.
There's some interesting stuff you could have done. One character going into one room in one timeline, and then when we're in that room, we're in a different timeline, that kind of thing. Like Psycho 4.
Reminded of better films.
I'm telling you, that Glenn Morgan can learn a thing or two from Mick Garris. But yeah, I think you're right. It's a mess. It's an interesting mess, but it's a mess, and you just see the conflict between the two different types of movies that were trying to be made. This kind of like dark, subtle, more Val Lewton esque kind of thing that Glenn Morgan wanted to do, and the skin cookies that the Weinsteins wanted.
I will just say two things by way of two things that I kind of liked. One was to see the trio of those sorority sisters of the actresses Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Michelle Trachtenberg, and Lacey Chabert.
Oh yeah.
They're great together. I don't think the characters are written in as a developed way as they were in the 74. Because I know when we talked about the 74 film, we were like, man, these are like fully realized characters.
Yeah.
You don't really get that here. So, but like, I just think they have a great presence.
I think it's more just the actors than
Yes.
like the characters they're all kind of interchangeable.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
All of them are playing Margot Kidder when it starts, right?
They're all getting drunk. Like
They're a kind of an aggressive, abusive drunk, right? They're like a sarcastic, snarly drunk. And that's all of them when it starts. But anyway, like, I like them. It's like, oh, that's nice. The other thing I kind of like that I will say, this film is like, unnecessarily brutal and cruel. If there was ever a version of this film where like some of the murders happen off screen, that is not the film you get here. Like there are so many people getting impaled by any kind of instrument, eyes getting plucked out, people getting bags over their head and getting bludgeoned to death. And poor Andrea Martin,
I don't even know, like, an icicle falls from the eaves trough and stabs her head?
right through the eye, down through the mouth, she's gone. Takes her right out. But like that's what I mean, right? You can say that, like, the kind of perverse, incestuous, yellow-skinned, murderous, cannibal murderer is doing murderous things. It's like, yeah, okay. That's cool. And then, of course, again, the spoiler, right? His sister, daughter, Agnes is equally murderous, and they're eating eyeballs and they're doing all because like that's all fine and good. But then when the world itself is turning against these characters, right? It's like, yeah, this world is just brutal. And that's consistent. Like there is no part of this world where you're like, yeah, they can survive. I don't know if I like it, but I appreciate it because at least that's consistent, right? It's like that's this vision of this horrific world throughout the entire film.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, yeah, the main girl, don't ask me her name, Katie Cassidy from Arrow. She's like the Olivia Hussey character because she's the one with the boyfriend, right?
Kelly,
Sure. So her boyfriend, the dilemma in the original is she's pregnant, wants an abortion, and he doesn't want her to have one, and there's conflict there. The conflict with the couple in this one's a little muddled. He had sex with another sister and it was filmed, and then she finds it. Is that their conflict?
yeah, he's cheating on her, and he's a scumbag. Or wait a minute, didn't wasn't she the woman in the video?
No.
There was some.
No, it was one of the other sisters that gets killed by Agnes or Billy.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
And then he's saying that someone got mad at him at work, stole his tapes, and but she's mad at him because he even has tapes. And then we're like,
tapes.
but yeah, but their conflict kind of is. I think that's their conflict. It's like, is he a scumbag or not? And but that kind of disappears.
It does because he leaves. He gets kicked out of the sorority house and then doesn't appear again until Act 3.
Yeah. Whereas in the original, it keeps this conflict throughout while this whole thing is going on with the phone calls, and to the point that we suspect Peter may be involved in some shape or form with the killers, right?
That the boyfriend may be part of it, yeah.
Yeah, but this movie kind of starts with a conflict, but then it kind of just lets that go, and it's not really part of the story at all about midway through.
Of course, though, if 1974's film was a murder mystery, oh no, who is stalking these women? Who is murdering them? There is no mystery at all in 2006.
Well, sort of. I mean, there's sort of a mystery in the sense that we think it's Billy, and really it's kind of been Agnes this whole time, even though Billy's like, I guess, on his way to the house. We suspect it's been Billy already in the attic killing these people, but then we find out it's Agnes. So
Okay, I know what you mean.
not that it's a mystery, but it's there's a reveal, so to speak.
Okay. No, that is true. I mean, I haven't really thought about it all that much because
It's all I've been thinking about.
it is not clear at all why she is there, why she is doing what she's doing, beyond the fact that it's Christmas Eve, right? Like it's, oh, on Christmas Eve, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. If that's it, okay, cool.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense if you think about it. So she was put inside an orphanage or something, some sort of facility after Billy took her eye out and made skin cookies out of the mother. So somehow Agnes is now an adult and has been killing these girls and then decorating the tree with body parts or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, and I guess they mention at the beginning that every Christmas Eve, Billy tries to escape to go home. So I guess Agnes, I was gonna say does this every year, but I guess picked the right year, the same year that Billy successfully escapes to go home.
Yeah, that was a good coincidence.
Yeah. See, if you think about it, it just falls apart.
And Agnes played by one of the crew members
The focus puller.
that they hired him in part because of his hair. He had a very nice head of hair. And it's like, okay, hey, you can do this. For me, that Agnes that crew member as an actor playing Agnes does the film no favors.
I think he fits fine. Like, I don't think he stands out in one way or the other.
Well, no, I do. Like he he's well, the actor, but the character is female.
Careful.
The character, I don't think works in the film. Like, sure, the character works, because the character is as sadistically perverse for some reason as Billy, the brother father yellow skinned psychopath is. But the performance, I don't know, like it doesn't have the intensity. I don't know what it is. Like it feels like someone pretending. Even the voice, right? Like feels like someone pretending. I mean, just to be fair, you're right that like it's kind of disingenuous to point out any one thing and say, "Oh my god, that thing. If only that had been different, everything would be great." It's like, no, but I mean, we were recently talking about, like with Last House and talking about like, Hess, my lord, what a performance. And it like all I felt was like, yeah, like if there was an actor that could bring something to it instead of learning on the job, it could have added something. I don't know if that would have been anything or enough, but
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I just feel like at that point, whatever.
oh no, I again, like yeah, like you're just piling, crap onto crap, I suppose. But again, I guess this gets back to like decisions were made. And I don't know whose decision that was exactly, if it was the directors or producers or whatever.
Well, if you ask the director, it's the producers, and if you ask the producers, it's the director.
If you ask the producers, you'll have to talk to their lawyers, I guess.
Apparently, Agnes was only just supposed to be like a half sister, but it was the Weinsteins are like, "No, make it an incestuous sister-daughter thing," which I'm like, "Okay." And skin cookies.
Skin cookies.
I can't get over that part.
The skin cookies and not the Christmas tree topper that's a disembodied head or a decapitated head?
Well, that's festive.
Okay, hey. Well, no, wait a minute. The skin cookies had little Christmas cookie cutters. That's festive.
That's true. I guess it works. I guess the Weinsteins were right.
Okay, okay, to everybody listening, you can quote that and you can play it back.
Oh god. But I think going back to Agnes, I think it's less about the performance as the problem, and it's like the character.
Yes,
It's too complicated for its own good.
agreed, agreed, agreed.
It would work if we think it's Billy and we find out it's been Agnes this whole time. There is no Billy, or Billy's been dead, or Billy's not there. The fact is, you have like this whole thing with Billy escaping at the beginning. And then meanwhile, these girls are getting picked off one by one, and we're led to believe it's been mostly Agnes, but it gets convoluted as to when Billy is even in the situation of the girls.
No, agreed, agreed. Too much, I was gonna say effort, but like just too much bullshit and not enough payoff.
Yeah, because he's treated like he's the final kill, right?
Yeah,
Like falls off the railing and gets stabbed by the top of a tree or something.
Billy, yes, Billy.
Yeah, but it's unclear what he even had to do with the sorority sisters this whole time.
No, 100% agreed. But that's exactly what you were saying. Like, just like too much. I just said more. It's just like more, but like there's too much stuff thrown at, in this case, thrown at the script. And again, for me, the whole backstory of this relationship that added something kind of weird and mysterious and even eerie or creepy to 74, this Billy and Agnes obscene phone call thing. It's like, what is the one way to destroy the monster? It's like shine a light on it. And so that's what this film does, right? It gives you all the backstory you never wanted. And it's like, here, this explains everything. Thank you. Thank you for like ruining whatever imagined mystery I had in my head from 1974's film.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, it is like Rob Zombie's Halloween in the sense that it's like it's giving backstory to something we don't need.
Agreed.
Do you have any final thoughts on Black Christmas 2006?
I never saw this theatrically, but I know it didn't really fare all that well. I do know that there had been a number of different edits or versions of this film. It had been kind of recut. I know there is a quote unquote European version, so it was edited for like European markets. I know some of these edits have done things to, some of the violent scenes. I know even there have been changes even to the final act. I actually want to see a company like, I don't know who would do this, probably Shout, Scream Factory. Give me all the versions of this on 4K, please. I am, as much as, like, I don't like a lot of what this does, I would be very curious to know if there is something close to a Glenn Morgan cut. I would at least want to give that a second look if there is.
There's 3 endings for this film.
Yeah, like I was so like I guess part of what I'm saying is I don't know what version I've actually seen. I know the ending that I've seen, ends at the hospital. It really feels like a 5-minute sequence that is that obligatory scene in every horror film when the monster is dead and he's not quite dead, except this case it goes on for 5 minutes and it involves a chase, and as you've said, involves the killer being impaled by a Christmas tree because, seasonal. I don't think this film deserves to be, like, say, saved, so to speak, because I think it's kind of flawed severely. But I am curious to know if there is a cut of this film I have not seen that I think might be better. That's very possible.
Yeah, that'd be cool if that exists. But yeah, because this film did so poorly, the company that had the rights for the Blu-ray, Vivendi Visual Entertainment, they actually canceled their plans for the Blu-ray release,
Ouch.
and they released it only on HD DVD, which was a short-lived format that was competing with Blu-ray for a while. There is a Canadian released Blu-ray released by TVA,
Hmm.
but it's been long out of print. So it is one of those rare movie Blu-ray things. So there's that. It's got that going for it. Like I said, there was 3 endings. I should say 3 alternate endings of this film. I don't know if you want to know what they were, but like,
I'm morbidly curious. I would be very curious to hear like a 2023 Glenn Morgan audio commentary on what this film was like to make.
I doubt that will happen because he has disowned this film.
Not surprised.
Yeah, so I don't know. Did you want to know what the alternate endings were or not really?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so sure. Indulge me. What are the alternate endings of Black Christmas 2006?
Okay, well, for our listeners, how the ending is in the film, we said Billy is killed by a Christmas tree. Prior to that, Agnes is killed by what are those life support thingies?
Uh, I don't know what they're called. Paddles.
Yeah, you know those things that they put on someone's chest to like revive them?
Defibrillator.
Sure. I'm not even going to try and say that. But they stick that on Agnes's face and kill her. Alternatively, the first alternative ending was older sister and main girl engage in a heartwarming talk with the sister opening Claire's present to her. And the ending concluded with main girl getting a call from Kyle's phone, implying that either Agnes or Billy survived.
That is a callback to 74.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's okay.
The second ending had main girl being brought to the morgue to examine Agnes's body, only to find Claire's body, revealing that Agnes escaped while Billy dies from his burns. The ending concludes that the sister was killed by Agnes, and main girl ends up electrocuting Agnes and then is picked up by her parents, like to go home.
No, no.
The third ending had the morticians discovering Billy's body is missing while a shot inside a smoke detector on the wall reveals that Billy escaped.
Well, I mean, at least that one opens up the possibility of a sequel. Black Christmas 2,
Yeah.
no good, but still. It's interesting that there were 4 endings, though. That tells you something about the production.
Yeah. I feel like the first one, that sounds like something Glenn Morgan, that sounds like more like his ending with the phone call.
We're we're gonna end it with a phone call. Just wait for it.
Yeah. Because remember Black Christmas phone call? Like, it's kind of important. The tagline of 2006 Black Christmas, this holiday season, the sleigh ride begins.
SLAY.
Yes,
Play on words. I approve.
I will let the Weinsteins know. So, like we alluded, this film was a critical and financial failure. Interesting. I read this. I thought this was the most interesting thing about this movie is because of the failure, Bob Clark apparently began to work on a straight up sequel to the original film, and Olivia Hussey and John Saxon would be reprising their roles, and it would concern Jess being the new house mother of a sorority house. But Bob Clark passed away, and then the project kind of died with him.
That's unfortunate. but like an amazing alternate world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because of the failure of this film and Glenn Morgan's previous film, the remake of Willard, he, outside of a couple episodes of X Files, has not directed a feature film since Black Christmas 2006.
That's kind of a shame because, like I said, right? Like he's clearly a cinephile. He clearly loves the art and the horror genre, just based on some of the stuff he's even written, right? Like because he was writing and show running, I think, the X Files for a few seasons. Worked on the spin-off Millennium. So, like he's got a vision and a mind for this kind of material. So that's kind of depressing.
Well, I guess I'll end on this film did release on Christmas Day, 2006. And it apparently caused an uproar of controversy by some Christian groups because of releasing it on Christmas Day. This is back when people complained about something and people just chose not to listen to it.
So that was what we thought about Black Christmas 2006. We'd like to know what you think about it and what we've had to say. If you have those thoughts, please consider sharing them either at any one of our social media platforms. It's all at Cult Film School, or you can reach out to us directly by email at cultfilmschoolpodcast@gmail.com.
Okay. Black Christmas 2019. The greatest gift to Black Christmas 2006. So if you go on IMDb, Dion, you will read a group of female students is stalked by a stranger during their Christmas break. That is, until the young sorority pledges discover that the killer is part of an underground college conspiracy.
Yeah, okay. So I think it can get a tentative pass, but in so many ways, that isn't really what this is, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what this is, but you're right. It doesn't spoil the film.
No, because it says stuff like the stranger is singular. So that's like, because you'd think like if it's a singular stranger, what in the hell's the conspiracy? Who is the singular stranger conspiring with? Himself or herself?
Yeah. And it alludes that there is a conspiracy.
Which I mean, maybe that's a spoiler. It doesn't tell you of what kind or, but like the idea that it's something bigger and deeper and stuff. It's like okay.
Yeah, bigger, deeper, like a message. Okay, so similarities to Bob Clark's 1974 Black Christmas. Well, it's we got sorority sisters,
That we do.
we got Christmas break.
We do.
Uh I that's it.
Well, no. I will add. We get threatening phone calls, but now they involve text messages and sometimes emojis.
We get threatening text messages, yeah.
Yep. The obscene phone call taken into the 21st century. We have a cat. We have a house cat.
We have a scene for where someone's looking for the house cat,
Yep.
except in this one we rip off the jump scare from Exorcist 3.
And we have the mid end credit sequence, which involves the house cat.
Is there a mid Are you serious?
Oh my god, you've never seen it. You've never seen it.
As soon as the movie ended, I turned that fucking thing off.
There's a mid credit sequence. Here, I'll spoil it. It cuts back to the, I don't know, kitchen of the house with a dead black mask on the ground, kind of surrounded by the black oil, and the cat is lapping up the black oil.
Oh. Is it called Black Christmas because the goo is black?
This film, probably. I mean, obviously, they got the rights to Bob Clark 74 Black Christmas, so they're going to call it Black Christmas. And for all the other reasons you've established that it has some similarities, that's the reason they're calling it Black Christmas. But in the context of this film, yeah, Black Oil Christmas, Texas edition or whatever, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's lots of things I don't know about this one.
So, aside from the cat, sorority sisters, sorority house, Christmas break,
We also have a falling out of a relationship between a man and a woman.
do we?
In 74, there's a couple and the woman wants to get an abortion and the male, the partner doesn't. Here, we get the man who has sexually assaulted the woman and is now kind of like harassing her and kind of her friends, at least her. It's very clear she's been traumatized by this assault. And as the film begins to kind of stand up for herself and fight back against the man who abused her. The only reason this is at all relevant is because there is this kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like couple, and this kind of couple at a crossroads. In this case, you could use couple in big quotation marks, but still.
I didn't get the sense that they were a couple. I thought they just were at a party or something.
Well, I mean, yeah, they were just at a party. But what I mean is like they have a man and a woman who are kind of butting heads over something. Like he's still kind of pushing her buttons and kind of getting in her face, and she is beginning to fight back, stand up for herself.
Okay, so yeah, we have text messages, but they're not from an anonymous person. They're from the founder of the college.
Well, which is like a ghost account, or it's not really the founder, or is it?
Sure. Yeah, okay. So I think we're already kind of into the differences of this one. No Billy,
No Billy,
no Agnes,
no Agnes.
no cops,
There's one security guard, but aside from that, no cops.
no mystery,
There's a little mystery.
no movie. Like yeah, I don't know. My thoughts are all over the place with this movie.
Okay, I'm going to start. I saw this theatrically with my friend Adrian. My immediate reaction to it after I saw it was like, this is really bad. I've had years to kind of, think about it. It was kind of like a in joke between the two of us for a time. I went out of my way, I think last year, I bought the Blu ray. I've revisited the film a couple of times this week.
How much did you pay for that Blu-ray?
I don't know. It was like on Amazon. It was like, I don't know, like $18 maybe.
Oof.
But this is the thing though, is that like after I saw it, I was like, okay, I kind of think I understand what they're trying to do. I was confident that the director of this film, Sophia Takal, couldn't have been as quote unquote bad as I assumed after first seeing it. So I went out and watched some more of her films. She's a decent director. She's a decent director, which makes me even more puzzled about this film. This film feels so like it knows so much what it wants to do, and that almost has nothing to do with, as we've established, the source material, or in broad strokes, the genre of the horror thriller or the horror film. And so I don't know what you're left with.
Right. This is her third film?
I believe it is her fourth film, although the third film, the one immediately preceding this, was a telefilm, a film nonetheless, but a film made for TV for Hulu. Yeah.
Okay.
Her second film, it's very good. Always Shine with Mackenzie Davis. I actually would, Adrian, recommend it to you if you can find it. It's decent little kind of like American indie suspense thriller, but it's about a relationship between women, women who are friends, women who are kind of jealous about their career. And in that film, Always Shine, the career is as an actress. And one of them is an actress in like low budget horror films.
Okay.
And so there's all this kind of meta stuff about, like they're making me be naked and it's a stupid script.
Right.
Anyway, it's like a smart script and it's well made. I only mention all of this because Black Christmas doesn't have a smart script. And I don't think it is really well made. I mean, it's well made technically, but anyway, go ahead, Adrian. Tell me what you think about Black Christmas.
We saw this in 2019.
We did.
I'm pretty sure I had COVID when we watched this. But regardless, I recommend that's how you see this movie. This movie is best seen with COVID-19.
Or Sudafed.
I was kind of excited to see this because it was co-written by April Wolf, who at the time had a really great podcast, Switchblade Sisters, where she would bring in like women in the industry, directors, filmmakers, writers, and they would talk about their favorite like horror and genre movies, and it was smart and funny and gave a female perspective on these films, and I loved it. And so when I heard that she was involved in writing this Black Christmas remake, I was excited to see it. Then I saw it, and I was reminded of that old adage: "Those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach start a podcast."
And that's both of us.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, this movie is so hard to talk about because it's all over the place. But how this movie kind of came about was kind of an odd. It got greenlit under odd circumstances. So apparently, Jason Blum, who is in charge of Blumhouse, around the time that the 2018 Halloween movie came out, he made some sort of comment about why he didn't have a lot of female directors in his company, and he said something about there's only a few female directors, and there's even fewer that want to do horror. And then there was some backlash, and within 24 hours of this backlash, he greenlit and commissioned Sophia Takal to make this remake of Black Christmas, making her the first female director in his company to direct a horror movie.
And get a theatrical wide release. She was working within Blumhouse for Into the Dark, which is the TV or the Hulu based series of like telefilms.
This movie was written, shot, and released in theaters within 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I swear, if you showed me this script and I read it, I would have assumed it was a comedy, like a parody. Like when you watch this movie at any point, you will likely forget you're watching a horror film.
I think that's fair. It doesn't lean on the iconography of the horror genre very much at all.
Well, it's a slasher film without any slashing.
Yeah, in part. Well, hey. The murderers, Black Mask, use bows and arrows. Why?
Why?
Phallic penetrating. And you're going to say, can a knife do that? And I'm going to say, yes.
Also, we don't see any of that penetration. We don't see any kills in this movie. They're all done off screen.
Yes. Except for the men. The men get killed on screen.
Well, they're men. This movie, yeah, it's
Can we just like get to the
let's just get to it. It's very
to the point, right?
yeah,
Like, cause I think the core reason why this film doesn't work or suffers is because it really feels as if this is a message film. Nothing wrong with a message film. We've seen and talked about lots of message films before. I'm reminded of Lambada. Forbidden Dance, message movie, right? These messages. Nothing wrong with a message until the message gets in the way of the narrative, or in this case, gets in the way of the narrative you're telling within a certain genre. That, I think, to me is a problem here because the film is like tripping over itself to tell you its message. It's very explicit. It is the film. And because of that focus, it is so interested in, like these themes and this message. It's not even themes. It's like the message of the film is this. And like everything else is subservient to it. Like, I don't know, things you'd have in horror, like, suspense.
this movie is all message. It's got this heavy, I don't even know what you call it, female empowerment message, I guess.
This is I mentioned this in passing when we did Halloween. This is a Me Too slasher.
Yeah, Halloween 2018.
Halloween 2018 gives you Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, who is standing up and fighting back against her abuser and attacker.
Right.
And that is coming out at a time, again, like in the last decade, when you had a movement of this, right? And so this got a lot of cultural traction. It appears in 2018. It appears in Black Christmas 2019. And I got no problem. I have no problem with the message.
I have no problem with the message either. The problem is its execution.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so this has a strong female empowerment message like Halloween 2018, but it has the subtlety of its messaging like Halloween Kills. Like how the message is executed, it needs to be in service of the story.
Yes.
What is empowering about female characters that are being assholes to each other?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like criticizing a movie for being heavy-handed with its message, it's not something people should be afraid of discussing or criticizing, because that's like saying Birdemic can't be criticized because it's got a great environmental message. This movie starts off so problematic. It's ham-fisted right away with the first scene. There's a girl walking to a party and she gets a call from her friend who bought her a dildo so she never needs a man. And I'm okay. But then there's the black hooded figure, the killer, who appears. And then she runs to like some random house and she knocks on the door. And who opens the door but the hooded figure? Which you're like, how did they get into the house? No weapon. This figure, he pulls an icicle from the eaves trough and stabs her with it while she's making snow angels in the snow. and you're like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." Then she's dead, and the killer drags her, and suddenly the snow angel, it looks like a penis.
This is what the director has said in that audio commentary I listened to. This was all intentional.
I have no doubt it was intentional, but that's kind of the problem with it. It's not foreshadowing. It's taking a message and shoving it in the viewer's face and smacking you with it. This movie, it treats its audience like they're idiots.
I understand the choices that they made, but like to me, it feels like a cop out to make this oil substance, which has possessed, taken over the bodies and the consciousnesses of these men. So the men, when they join this like secret conspiracy cult led by Carrie Elways, the teacher, white man teacher of the school, how dare he teach the classics? It feels like a cop out that these characters, these white men who join this cult, aren't being led by their own. They're like being controlled by some old white man, the patriarchy.
Yeah.
It's like, no, no. Like, it's a cop out. Like, no, make these men active participants in this horror to like hold them accountable to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem with when I said the execution. In the end, these, men, the evil that men do, in this case, they're possessed. It's not even by their own doing,
Yeah.
right? This goo is making them murder and go after women, which all it makes the ending's really weird, right? Because at the end she destroys the statue and you get this like the spell has been broken on all these men, and then they lock the fraternity brothers in the house and they burn them alive. And the movie's like, "Yeah, we're burning the evil men," but they're all innocent because they were all possessed, and at the moment that you broke the spell, they had no control over their actions, and so you still burn them alive?
This is what I meant. Like, it's kind of a cop out, right? Like, so in other words, because of that, the film gives us, like white men. Am I right? That, in some way, it's a perversion of the story they're telling, but in some way kind of reveals the story that's underlying the story they're telling. There's nothing wrong at all with like exposing injustices and exposing horrors, fighting back. But that isn't exactly what this is for the reasons you've just explained, right? And so what are you left with? Like, that's the other thing, is that like as soon as the possession stuff starts appearing, I wasn't expecting magic in my horror film. There's nothing wrong with supernatural horror films, but that's not the way this film is set up until it is. So, like, it also feels like, in terms of a narrative, it feels like it's cheap. We're going to break the story world in this way to do this just because. So, if we ignore that, then it's like, okay, so what else are we left with? And this is what you said earlier about this group of sorority sisters.
Who are all terrible to each other?
Largely, yeah. I mean, there's like four of them. Even though they're together, they're all alone. In part, their weakness is when they're alone. You get that moment in the third act. You mentioned it, where the sorority sisters save Riley. That's the Imogen Poots character. The lead. Save her from certain death at the hands of the big black mask guy, whoever he is, and they have like a big fight. It just feels so unearned, so kind of false. It's like the only thing that really feels sincere are the filmmaker's intentions, which again gets back to this message. And as I think we've said, the message kind of buckles under the weight of the film that's trying to support it.
Yeah, I like how they make the main character an orphan so that she's a completely blank slate. Like, yeah, what was kind of mind-boggling to me is like, okay, so here's something I did like. All the frat boys that are like the villains of this movie, they all look and sound the same to the point that you can't distinguish one from the other, which I think is very much on purpose.
Yep.
But the problem is the same is true for the sorority sisters. They all have the same personality. They all sound the same. And I don't think that's on purpose. And I thought it was surprising that a film with this strong female empowerment message was so lackluster in its characterization of its female protagonists. That and they're all terrible to each other. Like there's like one of the worst things that is done to another character in this film is the main girl, when they do that sexy Santa dance at the frat house. Side note, like, why the hell did they do that? They hate these frat brothers, yet they're gonna go do this, like, sexy Christmas dance. Why? Like, I didn't get that. But so she, in that, breaks from the song and reveals that one of the frat brothers sexually assaulted her. So her friend has a video that someone made of this performance and puts it online without her consent. Like, you want to have a strong female message, have strong female characters.
That is one thing this film doesn't really do. It has a central character. I like Imogen Poots, so like in the character of Riley.
She's fine, but the character's just a nothing. She's just a blank slate for information to be delivered to us through her, the audience.
She does have the instigating trauma, which kind of is an undercurrent to everything that happens in the film, right? But aside from that, I agree. There's nothing there. Aside from like a reaction to trauma. And again, this is where calling this film Black Christmas and being reminded of the 1974 film does this film a disservice, because in that 74 film, you did have characters who were different, had different wants, different characteristics, different ways of kind of seeing the world and interacting with it. Some of them were independent, some of them were not, but there was dialogue. There was like you got the sense of people kind of in a group, in a community, and negotiating these things. To your point, you don't really get that in this film, which again, kind of as you've said, as we're saying, like if that is the message of the film, it does a disservice even to that message. If this is the vessel for that message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This movie's so arrogant the way it comes across. Like, if you disagree with it, you hate women, or like, like if you hate Black Christmas 2019, like you hate women, you probably hate gay people and trans people and people of color. So if you don't like this, I can only conclude you are the Grand Wizard of the KKK or Kirk Cameron. Or, like it's just like it's just so ham-fisted to the point that it's like it's barely a movie, to be honest with you. Like, it's like a public service announcement of this, like, very, very cartoonish message about female empowerment.
I'm most insulted, I think, by the way this attempts to kind of graft itself onto the horror genre. Because the horror genre has historically and traditionally had a very you could say problematic relationship with gender, especially in the slasher film.
Yeah.
And there have been films and filmmakers that have very consciously approached this, sometimes satirically. Right now, I'm thinking of Slumber Party Massacre, right? Like, there are films and filmmakers that have attempted to address these gender dynamics in the genre in a thoughtful way.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really feel like what's going on here. This feels like, to your point, kind of like an after school special about how women can help each other and themselves against the travesties of, date rape and sexual assault and like toxic masculinity. And it just so happens to kind of graft itself onto this pre existing story about murders that happen on Christmas Eve. But again, it's like a slasher without slashing.
No, every time a female character is left alone, she will inevitably be killed, but off screen. So if she walks into a room, we'll see a hooded figure behind her, and then she'll close the door. Like, that's as close to slashing as we get in this film.
Monsters without intent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am glad this film exists because it's this historical curiosity and it's kind of funny to me.
I think it undermines its message.
Oh yeah, no, but like that's what I mean. Is that like
Well, it does a disservice to its message by existing.
no, well, no. I mean, well, yeah, okay, yes. Like
Because the messaging is a good message, an important message, but this is what they offer to support that. All the characters are so dumb. It's like all the male characters are just cartoonishly evil, and all the female characters are just cartoonishly female. Like, our opening's introduction to our character, she's in her room and her sister comes in because she needs to borrow her diva cup and changes it in front of her. I'm like, do women do this? You change tampons in front of each other? I don't think so.
the director in the audio commentary said this did in fact happen to her.
Okay, well, I can't argue with her, but I just didn't know that was a thing, going around changing tampons in front of each other.
There you go. That's what me as a man, I'm unaware of.
Yeah, okay, fine. But I mean, in your movie, it's a bit of a silly note to begin with such a important message. So all the men are cartoonishly evil except our two boyfriends, who are so cartoonishly beta male that they are like human puppies, constantly apologizing for every move and sound they make,
You're saying that though, but that's until they get possessed by the power of, I was gonna say Grayskull, by the power of toxic masculinity.
which could be Grayskull.
It could be Grayskull, actually, yeah.
Yeah, if they had the power of Grayskull, this would have helped the movie. um, yeah, I like how the boyfriend, who is like a lapdog to his girlfriend, who's one of the sisters, I think she even calls him Smoosh, like a pet name.
Something like that, I think, yeah.
When he decides to step up out of his kind of beta maleness, when he's questioning one of the sisters who, I don't know what they're talking about, evil men or whatever, right? And then she's like, well, why do you keep going after men? She's like, because men have all the power. And he's like, not all men have power. and, and then he immediately gets kicked out of the house. Then the killers come in and he says, hey, there's a man in the house. Before he can finish his sentence, he gets killed.
But now, what I think what you're missing slightly, his reaction, especially when he comes back, he grabs his head like, "Oh, my head." He's being possessed by the power of toxic masculinity. If you recall, he's like, "Hey, no one treats my women. I'm going to protect them." And he goes to grab the axe cuz he's an aggressive alpha toxic masculinity male, and that's when he gets the
As soon as he transitions to that aggressiveness, he gets killed.
because toxic masculinity must be destroyed.
Yes, that brings us to our love interest, who is also cartoonishly beta. I don't even know his name, but he's constantly apologizing for like everything.
I don't remember what the character's name is, and I've seen the film 3 times.
I gave him a nickname, and this is I have a question for you. I called him Bill Cosby.
That has a different connotation now, though, Adrian.
It does, but I'm like, this had to be on purpose. They dressed him like Bill Cosby, right? Like he's in a like I'm like, I don't understand what they're trying to tell me with
But
this movie.
but he's supposed to be a good guy, though, isn't he?
Why is he in a Cosby sweater? That's not like 2019 fashion style. Like that's like a Bill Cosby sweater from the 80s. Like he literally looks like Bill Huxtable or whatever his name was in that fucking show.
Cliff Huxtable.
Cliff Huxtable. I'm like, why?
Maybe it's to remind you that all men have within them to succumb to the power of toxic masculinity.
Yeah, which he does. They put the goop on him.
Oh, he does. He does. Yeah, he fights against it, but he does. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. As soon as the spell is broken and he helps the sisters, block the fraternity brothers so they can all burn to death. While he's doing that, he's apologizing, saying, sorry, they put a spell on me. And she's like, not now. I'm like, wait a minute. The movie's literally telling you that the spell was broken and he was not responsible for his actions, like the rest of the boys in there that you are burning to death. I'm like, what is this movie trying to tell me? Like female empowerment, great, but what about it?
I think it needs a sequel to explain that.
Like, fuck. Um, yeah, I did do some. Do you have any final thoughts on this movie?
No, not really.
Okay, I watched some press interviews with Sophia Takal
Mhm.
just to see like what was she thinking, and she did an interview with BGN, which is Black Girl Nerds. Anyways, the question kind of struck me because I was like, that's an odd fucking question. She was asked, why do you think that horror is a good avenue for Black Christmas and how it is communicating a number of social issues to the audience? And I was like, why is horror a good avenue for Black Christmas? I'm like, because it's a remake of Black Christmas, which was a horror film. But, anyways, what Sophia Takal said in response to this was, horror is a great place to explore the darker aspects of humanity in ways that don't feel preachy. And I was like, did you watch your fucking movie?
Wow.
And then I'm like, there's lines of dialogue. Like when Carrie Ewells, what's his last name?
I called it Elways, but you could be right.
Robin Hood Men in Tights. Okay, so when he's revealed as the villain, which the fucking reveals in this movie, there's no other characters. It can only be the frat boys and the professor that are behind this,
That's correct.
right? So he reveals that he's behind this, and it's like, yeah, we knew. And then he gives this like James Bond villain monologue where he says to main girl, toward the end of his life, Hawthorne foresaw the threat posed by women, so he took precautions in case they strayed too far out of line. A master of the dark arts, he left instructions on how to create an army of young men to take our power back. Then she goes, "You're all insane." And he replies, "No, no, not insane. Simply men.
Brilliant.
Don't feel preachy," the director said. And this is dialogue in her movie.
That line, that gives you the undercurrent of the film's ideology, right? Like, as much as it is explicitly talking about toxic masculinity, it's really taking a sidestep to talk about, no, this is just masculinity. We are simply men. Insane men. This film, yeah, like does a disservice, as you've said, and I agree. Like it when I said like it's funny, like it's kind of funny because like it has ambitions that it really, really terribly doesn't achieve. Beyond, I know I said like after school special, like it does have that kind of like two-dimensional quality to it.
Well, say something with your message. Like, say what you will about Forbidden Dance's Lambada. They were going to solve the climate crisis by dancing. Sure, it's silly, but it was an answer, right? What's their answer here? Masculinity's terrible and toxic, so let's fucking kill them all. Like,
Kill men one room at a time, I think is the message by the end of it.
all the sisters show up and they have you've messed with the wrong sisters, and they all like do their Avengers kind of killing or whatever they're doing, like girl power, yay. But it's like, then what? Like, burn it all? Like, I don't know. I don't get this movie. I don't know why this movie. I don't know why Black Christmas. What does this have to do with Black Christmas?
Christmas, murder. That's about it. Sorority house, kinda.
The tagline of Black Christmas 2019. We're going to hell. Uh Slay Girls. And yes, the same kind of sleigh from 2006.
It's another play on words, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, apparently is girl empowerment, girl power, and as we've established, it's very possible that the women in Black Christmas kill more people than the men.
Oh, they slay.
That ritual while all the men are like standing. So to that extent, that's a great tagline.
That's a really good point. Yeah, they kill more than the murderers. Like,
At least 2 dozen of them totally dead.
oh yeah, what the fuck? Okay, so this group of fraternity boys who are part of this like satanic toxic masculinity whatever cult, right?
Yes,
On the night that they're having a party where the sorority sisters are going to do their sexy Santa dance for some reason, main girl walks by an open door and peeks into the room, and the fraternity boys are in their hoods
yes,
having this ritual.
yes.
Well, the fuck? Like, you think like they would at least close the door, or maybe not do this on the same night you're having all these people over for your party.
I mean, they got to get a lot of shit done before Christmas, I guess.
And the movie treats it like we're supposed to not know who the fucking people in the hooded killers are. We know that it's the fraternity brothers the whole time.
Yeah, no, I think we've established there is really no suspense in this film. It's like almost trying to wear the clothes of the horror genre, but they don't fit. They're like hand me downs that don't fit. There's a metaphor.
Uh did we say we hate women? Okay.
I like Imogene Poots. If you're listening,
Fuck. We better do like the divine secrets of the Yaya sisterhood next. Since this may be our last episode, let us know your thoughts on Black Christmas 2019. What is your take on our take? Let us know. Reach us on the social media we are on, or at cultfilmschoolpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, so the Blackest of Christmases, Black Christmas 2006 and Black Christmas 2019.
Bob Clark's Black Christmas is a classic. It's not surprising in subsequent decades, especially when there's a fever for remakes, go back to it. And so it's not surprising that you would see this pop up when it does. It's also not surprising to see it pop up in the close of its period, right? So mid 2000s, there's a wave of these remakes and reboots and this stuff. And also in 2019, as we've said, right? Like there is a cultural appetite, not only for horror again, but one that, if not is socially conscious, at least is tapping into something in the zeitgeist, right? What's something that's going on culturally. What's interesting to see them both is to see how each one of these films, in its attempt to remake, what it does to the original, right? So 2006, as we've said, it's kind of interesting. The 2006 philosophy is just more, right? Give us more grotesquerie, more perversity, more violence, more killers, more. It tells you stuff that you don't need to be told. It shows you stuff that you don't need to see, but it really wants to provoke a reaction. But, unfortunately, it wasn't the reaction that they wanted, I don't think. And then 2019, right? Like, it's interesting that instead of more, it gives you like an inverse. It like inverts everything, many things about the 74 film. We didn't mention that like it was an intentional choice for the sorority sisters. When they start fighting back against the Black Mask murderers, they kill them in many times in ways that the women were killed in 74, right? So like one Black Mask guy is suffocated by a plastic bag over his head. Another one is stabbed with like a unicorn statue or something. So it's very consciously trying to invert it. And a lot of what we were kind of looking at and kind of talking about, if not poking fun at, was not so much the message, but like the vessel through which it gave that message. Because it felt like in inverting it, it kind of didn't fully think through. Not its message was clear, but maybe not if it was fully thought through. And then, like, what are you left with? What happens if a message film doesn't have a completely thought out message? Like, what do you have then? I don't know. It's 2019. So it's kind of like Blackest of Christmases, maybe, but it's an interesting story of contrast. What about you?
It's all a blur. These movies are all a blur for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. In our next episode at Cult Film School, what better gift than the gift of Indonesian cult classics? We're going to be watching and talking about Mystics of Bali and Lady Terminator next time at Cult Film School.
Did I agree to this? Thanks for listening to this episode of Cult Film School. Leave a rating and review for the show and subscribe to the podcast to be the first to know when the next episode drops.
Follow us on Letterboxd and our social media, all at Cult Film School, and reach out with opinions on the films we covered in today's show and ideas for cult films we might cover in future episodes at cultfilmschoolpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time. Class dismissed.